Welcome to the 700 Club. Thanks so much for joining with us. Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pushing back on Senator Chuck Schumer's call for new elections to replace him. President Biden is standing behind Schumer's statements, intensifying the face-off between Israel and the United States.
Israel continues to make plans to go into Rafah despite opposition from the United States and the world. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Monday, Israeli forces carried out a raid on Al-Shifa Hospital, Gaza's largest medical center, because they said it had intelligence that senior Hamas militants were in the complex and arrested 80 people. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu is pushing back against U.S. pressure for new leadership. On Sunday, Netanyahu went on multiple U.S. networks to respond to Senator Chuck Schumer and the White House.
I think Schumer's statements are wholly inappropriate. I think we're not a banana republic. The people of Israel will choose when they'll have elections, who they elect, and it's not something that will be foisted upon us. But, you know, it's wrong to try to replace the elected leaders of a sister democracy and a staunch American ally at any time, but especially during the time of war.
Even before Schumer's speech last week, Israel's Channel 14 released a poll showing ongoing U.S. hostility has strengthened Netanyahu over his nearest political rival, Benny Gantz. The Jerusalem Post also reporting that a majority of Israelis support Netanyahu's day-after plan for the Gaza Strip when the war with Hamas is over. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz met with Netanyahu on Sunday. He said Germany stands with Israel, but like many nations, questions Israel's military operation in Rafah.
The longer the war lasts, the higher the number of civilian casualties rises, the more desperate the situation of the people in Gaza become, the more this begs the question, no matter how important the goal, can it justify such terribly high costs? Or are there other ways to achieve your goal?
On Friday, Israel's security cabinet agreed to a plan to enter Rafah. Egypt and the European Union object to that plan, and National Security Advisor John Kirby says the White House expects assurances of how Israel will take care of Gazans.
Now the Israelis will tell you they've got a plan for that, the evacuation, they call it humanitarian islands, and we welcome any credible plan to take care of them, but we haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen it yet.
The U.S. and other nations are calling for more humanitarian aid. CBN News witnessed the transfer of that aid by the IDF at the Kerem Shalom crossing into Gaza. Colonel Elad Goren of the Coordination of Government Activities in the Territories, or COGOT, says the problem is the UN is failing to distribute the aid once inside Gaza.
Just keep saying more, and it doesn't matter if we will pass 1,000 trucks here and they won't able to collect it, they will say that there is a humanitarian crisis. From our understanding, there is no humanitarian crisis. There are challenges, there are obstacles, and the main gap is the capacity of the UN agencies to deliver and to take responsibility over their own operation.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
I hope the world is listening to that from someone who's, you know, literally boots on the ground. They're saying the UN is failing here, and it's not new. There was a study done. It's by the Arab Barometer. It's part of Stanford University. They did a survey of Gaza before October 7th, and they released that survey in November. That survey showed that 68% of the population of Gaza faced food insecurity, that they were having trouble putting enough food on the table and wondering where their food was going to come every single day. Well, the IDF wasn't there at all. So if 68% of the population, just imagine what's happening now in wartime conditions with bombs coming in and soldiers. It's a humanitarian crisis, but it's based on what the UN failed to do for a long period of time. What Hamas is doing since 2006. And instead of building farms and building infrastructure and water and electricity and all the things that a city needs, instead of doing that, they were building tunnels. And here's the really bad news. They were building those tunnels, they were building their rockets with money from you and me. We contributed to that. We funded the UN, we funded UNRWA, we funded the Palestinian Authority, It's our money being wasted, misused, and misused for war. Now, Israel is in a desperate situation because the government, everybody wants to call it a terrorist group because it is, but it's also the government of Gaza, has vowed to repeat October 7 again and again and again and again until Israel is wiped off the map. If I lived in Israel, I would say, well, you're the one that's going to be wiped off the map. You can't be in power anymore if you hold these thoughts. And behind all of this, there are over 100 hostages still held in these horrible tunnels. This needs to end, but it's on Hamas. It's not on Israel. If you're concerned about the civilians in Gaza, you need to put pressure on Hamas. Lay down your arms, unconditionally surrender, release all the hostages, and pledge that you will leave power and that you will not ever try to wipe Israel off the planet again. If you do those things, well, then we can have peace, and this crisis, and it's a very real crisis for the people there, can be averted. Well, in other news, Americans desperate to flee Haiti are finding little help from our own government. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. The first charter flight with 30 U.S. citizens fleeing Haiti landed Sunday in Miami. As CBN's Dale Hurd reports, hundreds more are still trapped.
State Department officials say more than 30 U.S. citizens were on a government-chartered flight that touched down in Florida. It's also working to arrange more flights to get stranded Americans out of Haiti. Among those trying to escape the spiraling gang violence gripping Haiti is Francis St. Tellis, a Haitian-American from New Hampshire. He's been trapped in Haiti for a month and has already had 2 flights home canceled. His son, who lives in Virginia, is doing all he can.
I've been praying. I've been seeking guidance from people I trust, reaching out to the government, reaching out to my family and friends to get the word out about what is happening.
As powerful gangs continue to topple the sitting government, the capital, Port-au-Prince, has become a war zone, completely cut off from the outside world.
The situation is not really calm in Port-au-Prince because, like I said before, there was many attacks from the gang in Port-au-Prince. 80% of the capital is under influence of the gang.
Famine is also a concern. The World Food Program says nearly 1 million people are at risk. Hundreds of Americans are trapped. Among the Americans trapped in Haiti was best-selling author Mitch Albom, who spoke with CBN News' Billy Hollowell. Albom and his wife Janine run an orphanage in Haiti. They were on their monthly visit when Haiti's government collapsed. Trying desperately to get himself, his wife, and 8 American volunteers out of the country, Albom said he could get no help from the U.S. government.
And we basically got stonewalled and just told, oh, there's nothing we can do. Just shelter in place. Are you taking bullets? And I said, well, if we're taking bullets, why are you telling us to shelter in place?
The group was finally rescued last week in the dead of night by helicopter in a mission coordinated by Michigan Congresswoman Lisa McClain and Florida Congressman Corey Mills.
Then we ran outside and flashed the lights so that they could see where we were. And just like in one of those movies, you see a light coming out of the sky, you hear ba 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 ba, and next thing you know, there's a thing on the ground. Guy jumps out, I think it was Corey Mills, and said, let's go, let's go, let's go. And everybody runs in. And then, of course, that's when you hold your breath because you don't want anybody shooting at you from the ground.
Albom said his chief concern now is for the 100 children and staff he had to leave behind.
When we do our nightly devotions, you can hear all the gunfire in the background. It's such a juxtaposition. It doesn't make sense. They're singing these beautiful songs to God about being grateful for what they have. There's that song, you've given me love and a fine family. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. And you can hear while they're singing that, out in the street. I mean, like rapid fire, machine gun kind of fire. And, it's a shame that they have to live with this.
While the U.S. and Caribbean nations seek to establish an interim government, Haiti's former foreign minister warns the country risks becoming a big open-air jail run by gangs who will fight international attempts to end the violence. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Well, the crisis in Haiti is expected to bring a flood of new migrants to the United States southern border, as Congress is still deadlocked over funding to address the crisis. With the clock ticking towards a government shutdown Friday, the border is still a big source of contention. The disagreement is between the White House and congressional Republicans over funding to provide more border security. Well, a gospel marketing campaign that calls on Christians to love their neighbor is going global. The organization behind the He Gets Us campaign, best known for its Super Bowl ads, is taking its message to the Summer Olympics. CBN's Brody Carter shows us how it's preparing for the world stage.
We sponsor Joe Gibbs Racing, so we have Ty Gibbs, his grandson. We are the paint out on that car like 8 times during the year. Everybody from like Taylor Lautner to Russell Wilson. We had Michael Pittman was working with us. He was a 5th leading receiver in terms of catches in the NFL this year.
From sports stars to actors and artists looking to convey their view of Jesus. He Gets Us has become a top 100 advertiser nationwide. Most recently spent an estimated $17 million on Super Bowl ads dedicated to the gospel message of loving your neighbor.
I've certainly heard people question the amount of spending that we have. But what we're trying to do is if we followed the example of Jesus, both as Jesus followers, but also people who are skeptical about Christianity, the level of generosity that he taught, if we actually did that, would be profound.
The company is moving in 2024 to expand its reach, including this summer at the Olympics in Paris.
The NFL draft is coming up at the end of April. It's going to be in Detroit. That's a really cool event. You'll see He Gets Us doing a bunch of advertising, getting its message out there. And then also during the Republican and Democratic national conventions, and then all the way through, the presidential election in November.
The group's data from Super Bowl ads show these events are prime opportunities to grow its brand and message that the love of Jesus is for everyone. In the 10 days following the game, it tracked over 2 million users on its webpage, each one spending just over 2 minutes on the site.
Inserting that message of Jesus' love into the climate that we have today, where we've got loneliness and anxiety and significant political differences, I think that's a very provocative idea to suggest to the American people.
And behind this message is a goal: to get people to make a choice by visiting the He Gets Us website and signing up for a Bible reading plan or joining an online small group. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Thanks, Brody. Gordon, it's definitely a high-profile campaign that's gotten people talking.
Well, that's the whole point, to get people talking. And the whole point of what the Apostle Paul did, he would go to the marketplace. Isn't that wonderful? He said, I'm going to go where people are. I'm going to preach the gospel at the marketplace. I'm going to preach the gospel at Mars Hill. That's where all the philosophers gather to debate. I want to preach the gospel where people haven't heard it. And what a wonderful way to do it in our current marketplace. So our current marketplace, we're all online. We're all gathering for these sports events or these political events, or just pick something that a majority of people are going to be paying attention to. And in that, it's wonderful that you get to buy time. You get to participate in the current debate. And you need to let people know Jesus loves you. He really does. That's why he died for you. It's a wonderful thing to do, and I encourage them to go worldwide. Look at the World Cup, look at the Olympics. A lot of different platforms up ahead. Now more than ever, the world needs the gospel.